I've been trying for so long to make something out of nothing, boy. But it's been destroyed. I've been trying for so long to make something out of nothing, girl. You know this ain't my world. And so I'll disappear on the open road, traveling from here to God only knows, with nothing but my heart and my lonely ghost in the rearview mirror. I'll watch it all disappear. I've been working for so long to make something that won't go wrong. But I ain't that strong. I've been working for a while on a song that will make you smile. So won't you smile and let us disappear on the open road, traveling from here to God only knows, with nothing but our hearts and a lonely ghost in the rearview mirror. We'll watch it all disappear. I've been trying for so long to make something out of nothing, girl. You know this ain't my world. So let us disappear on the open road, traveling from here to God only knows, with nothing but our hearts and a lonely ghost in the rearview mirror. We'll watch it all disappear. Where do you go when there's nowhere to go? Where do you go when there's nowhere to go? Where do you go when there's nowhere to go? When she was just 18, she was 16 weeks along into her first pregnancy. They were married on a Saturday in June of 2003. She had never been happier, it was a glorious ceremony. And so she watched her Mexican boy grow into a man. He works hard for his family, doing all he can. But the money never seems to stretch, it just doesn't cover the bills. And so he works more hours and even more hours still. And so they've learned to sacrifice. They've given up on all things nice. And the children just don't understand. It's a mad, tough world. Judy's husband lost his job after he got hurt. He was now stuck in bed, so Judy went back to work. Judy made significantly less than her husband had. So they had to make some cuts, they had to cut stuff back. And so they've learned to sacrifice. They've given up on all things nice. And the children just don't understand. It's a mad, tough world. And so they've learned to sacrifice. They've given up on all things nice. And the children just don't understand. It's a mad, tough world. All right, hey, so my buddy Nick is just gonna be logging in just a second. He just hopped into the Zoom call, but yeah, man. So this is gonna be, hey, there he is. Awesome, cool. Let me here. Let me switch down here. Zoom with guest. Okay, let me. I have to. Here, let me just frame this a little bit better. Hold on. Zoom call with guest. Give me just 1 second. There we go. And cool, awesome. Oh, it happened. What?
Sorry, that was me.
No, I was like, hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Yeah, thanks for joining me in this. It's crazy. I've had this idea for absolutely ever, but I never thought I'm like, oh, I should totally do that, and then just never actually made went through the efforts of inviting you. But it's crazy, I have been since December of 2023. I've been really like sort of like hell-bent on reconnecting with a lot of my friends, both ancient friends and new friends, because I haven't I kept thinking I'm working on a project, and I'm like as soon as this project's done, I'll reach out to people and I'll reconnect and I'll do this, and then as I'm finishing up the project, I start 2 new projects. I'm like, okay, well, as soon as these are done, and I've been doing that for about a decade, and I'm like, okay, there's not going to be a time where I'm going to be okay. Like I just need to start, So I've been reaching out, and it's been great. Like I just talked to Brad Allen. Brad Allen says hello, and and I was like, so I talked to Brad yesterday, but
Cool.
I wanted to, but I thought, it's funny because gaming for me, role playing for me, has been such a huge part of my life, my whole life. Certainly I've gone a couple of years where I didn't game that much, or I mostly turned to computer art, like video game RPGs. But for the most part, since I was 7 years old, which was 1980, until now, I've been I've been a role player, and the person that I've role played with the most since that time has been you and Ron. I mean, certainly Ron has kind of dropped out, over recent years. Like he and I have kind of lost touch, but we, I think Ron introduced me to you when I was 12. I think it was, yeah.
It was around that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. My memory is that Ron told me, hey, this guy lives next door to me. He plays Dungeons and Dragons and Paranoia.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I think the first time I ever met you, you ran Paranoia for me and Ron and Jason Williams, who was a guy who lived across the street from me.
Yeah.
And because Jason was a big Jason previously to that had been the person who ran Paranoia. Like I had played Paranoia with him, but Jason didn't really like he didn't run it so that it was super funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
games
Yeah.
that you like so it's like I don't remember laughing a whole lot in that. Like, I would laugh when I would look at the rule book because the rule book is fucking hilarious. But but yeah. So
Yeah,
um,
and in fact, that was kind of that. I kind of wanted to talk because it's really funny to look at how, like my at least from a very personal perspective, like how role playing has changed. Because man, when I was a kid, like what, and so it was really funny. We were talking about so Nick and I both grew up in the Palm Springs area in a place called Palm Desert, and there was a Palm Desert Town Center, and where we got our games for the most part, at least. I mean, eventually Walden Books started offering, and eventually they had a pretty broad selection of RPGs, but originally it was a place called the Gamekeeper, and it was in the Palm Desert Town Center, and they were mostly like a hobby store, but then they also had like role playing section like that, and I and tell me if you remember this as well, because I remember seeing chainmail like in the Ziploc bags, like late iterations of the or like the 1980s versions of chainmail. Am I misremembering that?
I don't know. I saw it, but that would have been when I lived in Illinois.
Oh, okay.
Illinois was like a weird because it was close to Lake Geneva, where TSR
Yeah.
Hobbies, who published D&D at that time, they were based there, and so there was like a lot of this stuff kind of leaked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like there was a bookstore that I went to that had stuff like that. I never saw that stuff at the Gamekeeper. The Gamekeeper was a weird store because you'd walk in there and it was like there was chess sets and like all of this kind of like normal game stuff that was like at the front.
Yeah.
But there was like a corner that was all like Avalon Hill war games, the Chit and Hex war games,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then also RPGs were next to it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I remember because when you walked in, it was to the right. That was where the shelf for all the games were. But there was also a little section right, which is where I think I remember seeing chainmail. But again, maybe I'm misremembering because again it was over 30 years ago. My brain does not work that well remembering. But and then I remember there's a little section because I remember the very first time I saw Car Wars, which is the first game that I bought from the Gamekeeper, and I was at this point in time I was 12, and the reason why I could buy things because I had just started working at Domino's Pizza, which in California at that time you could start working at 12, but you got paid a training wage, which was half of minimum wage for your first 80 hours. And so they're like, great, this is slave labor and we get to take advantage of this little kid. And I was like, yeah, but even so, like I now had money my family, we were pretty poor. And so I finally had discretionary income that I could spend on whatever I wanted. And so it was entirely role-playing games and comic books. Well, and candy and like gigantic big gulps, so like or Slurpees, depending on whether I was at Circle K or 7-Eleven. But yeah, I mean, I remember walking in, like I would visit the Gamekeeper almost daily, and just look at like whatever games popped up, and it was, and there was always, it's really funny for me, the reason why I never really got into Warhammer, because it was just too expensive, like I was like, I can't,
Right.
I want to be able to buy one thing and then just be able to play that for months, and like I couldn't afford to yeah.
Yeah, like field an entire army of like dark elves or something like
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah.
that's like that's good. That Games Workshop has a nice racket worked out for that, but it's like you have to be, I don't know,
A
like
wealthy person. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
middle-aged guy with a six-figure income. Or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that,
yeah.
you know?
To be able to really feel the game the way that they're laying it out, and it makes sense because then people start with like I buy a few things and then I sell my youngest child to slavery and then I buy a few more things, but yeah, but it's so crazy because the thing is for me, like when I it's funny because all of the things that I learned from role playing, like
developing character backstory, developing the world, understanding the motivations of all the bad guys, and understanding the motivations of the nations, and understanding the motivations of the character, like, you know, and all the NPCs, like all of that, like built in me from a very young age, the rudiments of all of the things that I've done to the end of my days. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I would be. I teach college English, and I don't think I would be a teacher if I hadn't run games, because
Yeah.
it sort of taught me a lot of skills that oddly enough transferred over to teaching.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, but again,
Yeah.
because and again, and that makes perfect sense, because you sometimes have to break down sort of like obtuse ideas into easy digestible bite-sized pieces, so people can go, oh, I totally get that, you know, and so when you start doing that at a young age over and over and over again, then by the time you're like dealing with, you know.
Well, also just scheduling people to get together, and like arranging a game group is like a whole logistical set of skills that I didn't realize was like actually an important set of skills.
Yeah, amen. That's awesome.
You know what I mean? Like that whole side of it is there's a social part to that too, and so it's all, you know, so like all that's really important. I agree with you about all the creative stuff though too, because yeah, like it gave my imagination a place to kind of go and just run riot, you know.
Yeah.
And I could do whatever I wanted, and I always had these like notebooks full of like notional ideas for games, and like probably 80% of them never even got played at the gaming table, but it didn't matter. Like it was this is now there's all these terminologies for these things they have now. They now refer to a lot of that as like lonely fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fun. Like hey, like I could just go do my RPG stuff. I could build dungeons. I could do this stuff. I could just like imagine things, and that was like just totally fine. And this is a world where there was a lot of entertainment options and a lot of distractions, but not near as many as today.
Well, in fact,
like,
in fact, I do think that like that was, you know, particularly us growing up in the Palm Springs area, like it was a very retiree focused focus. Like so kids were intended to like be seen and not heard, and really even truthfully not seen. Like to show up and be like, hey, I'm the kid, and then you're supposed to disappear to your own corner. And so there was like you weren't allowed to ride, like it was illegal to ride your skateboard on the streets. It was just, you know, it was a very hostile environment to kids. So we just kind of had to come up with the things that we could do that didn't intrude upon the world around us. You know, the great thing was, it turns out there were like literally hundreds of worlds that we could explore, where like, you know, where I got to make the rules, god damn it, and I got to kill those bastards that told me I couldn't ride my skateboard on their fucking streets.
And all I needed was some dice and a notebook and maybe a rule book.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and that was fine. And to me that is actually also, like you were talking about, like just like the kind of low entry cost to all of this is that like, yeah, like a role playing game, once you got the rule book, like, you know, you could play, like you didn't actually need to buy the supplements. It was cool if you did.
Yeah.
But like you didn't need to buy them. You could just play for years and not do anything else, which is actually a good hobbyist model, not a great model for like maybe corporate
making money. Yes, exactly. It's so funny. That's exactly right, because because I couldn't afford them. I couldn't afford to buy all the modules and all the books and what have you. But that didn't mean that I couldn't go to Walden Books and bring my notebook and read them and take notes and make my own. You know, and so I plagiarized so much shit. Yeah. You know, and it was great. And hey Sam, how you doing, man? Good to see you, brother. And Sam says the level of using Discord bots and surveys to do scheduling. I love technology. Yeah, and it's funny because you know, figuring out people's. I mean, again, we did get to a point. Nick and I got to a point with our core group of gamers, just at the end of high school and just outside of high school, where we were gaming like 3-4 days a week. Like it was like it was absurd. You know,
I was gaming a little less than you because I think I was the only one who currently had a girlfriend in that group at the time. So that was like I was gaming like once a week.
Oh,
like
that's
versus like 3 times a week.
no, that's right. That's right. That's where the Night in the Life. So we were doing the we were doing Vampire the Masquerade,
Yeah, which I
and
was running,
yeah,
and
which
then you
Nick.
guys were like, "Oh, Nick's not here. But, oh, okay, I'll run it."
Yeah. That's exactly right. So Nick's running this epic campaign, and it really was. It was so much fun. It ran like over a year. It was like a year and change storyline, right?
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was that long. I think it only lasted a few months. But what happened was that I kind of seeded the ground of running the game to you and Jamie, basically.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like kind of what happened. And I was like, that's fine, because like what I really started to get left in the dust, because I was like, I would show up and be like, hey, like let's play Vampire, and then you guys would tell me about all of this crazy shit that happened. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, we did this, and I'm like, what? Like, and it was just like. And that was cool, man. I wasn't like upset about it or anything like that. I was just like, oh, okay, cool, And then I started playing in your guys' games.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, in fact, and that was really fun thing. And that was one of the cool things about our groups back then was like each of us was willing to run different games, and so Nick was running the predominant campaign, and I did something that was called the Night in the Life, and it was just like what is it like to be a vampire just roaming around? Like what do you do with your evening? How, like, do you hunt, and how do you hunt? And so it just started off with like, I would have like a little idea, and then one, I remember there was a really, really amazing session. It was just Eric and I, and it was just a cab ride. It was like in LA or something like that, and he was taking a cab ride from one place to another, and it was just Eric talking with the cabbie, and I was like, and it was epic because it was like, of course Eric is saying, like, the cabbie's saying things that he doesn't realize is suggesting. They're like, oh yeah, like he's talking about like lots of things that Eric as a vampire could misinterpret as like, oh yeah, like, oh it's real brutal out there. It's lots of people killing each other. And he's like, yeah. So it was that kind of thing. But anyway, it was just really, really fun. And I realized that, yeah, man, you can always go into a world. And as long as you give it enough attention, enough love, and understand the motivations of all the people that are rolling around, you can make it your own, and you can do your own thing. And then that becomes, at least in my brain, everything I've ever done is canon to my life, So I don't give a fuck about, I like the Star Wars things that we've done, canon, the Robotech stuff we've done, canon, the mech, and so, yeah. But so, okay, so talk to me about I mean, because we played a lot of games. We played a lot of games.
Yeah.
And it was always funny because we would be Nick was, it was like epic. It was like we're having a great time. It's really things are going really well. And then Nick would be like, I'm thinking, I've been doing some stuff, and I've been looking at Top Secret, and I really think that like maybe
we had now what's referred to as gamer ADD.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Right. And we would and certain things lasted a lot longer. Certainly the Amber Diceless game.
Yeah.
We played that for that was probably the longest game we played, that I ran.
Yeah.
Like that ran for probably about 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the first iteration, the one, or the one with James and you and myself and you and
no. That was for the Amber Diceless.
Yeah,
that
the
was
Jezreel one. Yeah.
Eric and Jamie and Ron.
Yeah.
Jason Keller. At that time. So yeah. It was it was crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean it's funny. In fact, I do. That's one of the. I really love Amber. In fact, it's really interesting to see that they're actually doing an Amber Chronicles of Amber television show, which is heartbreaking because because there's no way. Well, now they might be able to pull it off, considering there is CGI. But I remember talking. I was when I was at Universal. I reached out to Rogers Zelazny as a development executive. So that was my job, was to go find properties and be like, hey, can I, I want to talk to you about developing this. So I reached out to Rogers Zelazny because he was in conversation with people about doing him as a live action thing. And I was like, there's no way you can do that and do it justice in live action. I'm serious, like, man, like I was like we should do it in animation so we can do all the cool shadow stuff, and so he was pretty interested. Like he didn't pull the trigger, and then he died just a few months later, alas. But he did actually send me a copy of Night of the Lonesome October that was dedicated, which was awesome, because like I was like, that was a
wow.
yeah.
That is a brilliant book. I didn't read it at that time. Like I read it only a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Partly on your recommendation.
Yeah. Because it's such a it is that book in particular. It's such masterful writing, because it's simple. Like it's like there's no like I need to prove myself with my word player. Like it's just like great characters, great story, real simple like story structure, and then just delivered, like executed just perfectly. And I'm like, man.
I was just talking with Eric about this, actually, because he asked me, he's like, hey, I'm thinking about rereading the Amber books. And I said to him, I had read them a few years ago.
Yeah.
He there's this, like, accepted wisdom that the first 5 Amber books are like the best, and the Maryland books are not as good. But what I told Eric was, my experience of rereading them was that when I got to the first 2 or 3 Merlin books are maybe like amongst just if you just look at them as individual books, they are so strong. Like they are so well done. It's him at the height of his powers, basically.
Yeah.
And Trumps of Doom, Blood of Amber, and Sign of Chaos, like those 3 are pretty strong. It's the last 2 that kind of fall off a bit. And I don't know, like the last book, I don't know if his health issues were impacting him by that point. And I don't know, like when you were talking to him, how much he was being impacted by that, because I know it wasn't long after that he passed away.
Yeah.
But like, I think he had cancer.
I think he did. I think it was lung cancer. If I like, I didn't. Of course, I didn't ask him directly, but I think it was lung cancer. And yeah, man, and it's but even so, but it's so crazy. So here is this story about they're effectively gods. And then Eric Wujcik, a game developer from a little game called he's like, this is perfect for a role-playing game. And what we'll do is we'll make our characters the sons and daughters of the gods. That's like, and such a crazy idea, but then it's executed so beautifully, and it ends up being so much fun, because when you can do whatever you can imagine, then how do you? But all the characters can do that, and all the bad guys can do that. What do you do? What kind of stories happen? And it really was. I mean, it was super fun to spend and to spend so much time immersed in that idea. And it's really funny because I've done 2 significant Amber the Diceless role playing game campaigns, and one I was a conniving little. I was very much like the original Amber books. Like I was very much of that family, and then the last round I was very much not. I was very much a Merlin. I was like, oh, I'm going to try to be friends with everybody, and but even so. But it's really crazy. I think about some of the stuff that I did and the way I thought as Jezreel in the first thing, and I'm like, that is so unlike me as a person. I'm like, how was I doing that? That's because I was that conniving, and that it was really funny. But yeah, man, it's crazy because there have been so many games that we've played. The Mechton, it really breaks my heart that we did not think. Not that we even had the technology, but that we didn't manage to capture some of these stories, because there were some really, really amazing moments over the course of a bunch of the stories. And I know that you've had some campaigns that I was not part of. Like I remember the scritching on the wall thing where everybody's like, what the that I was told about, but I'm like, that is amazing. That sounds amazing. Tell us about that. What was that? That was
that was a Call of Cthulhu game that I ran. And Ron was there, and my girlfriend at the time, Wendy, was there, and a third person who I don't know who it was. So there were 3 players and me, and we were just playing, and it was nighttime at my parents' place, and we were playing, I think in this room that was like where we kept our computer. So we're, yeah, you know, and so we were like away from my family.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on the floor, and they were sitting on the floor too, and we were just kind of chillaxing. And but that's how I had everything set up. And we had and anyway, what happened in the game was that they were investigating a graveyard. And when they found what they found in the graveyard is they opened up a grave because there was this person they thought what might still be alive. And
Yeah.
they want, is his body actually in there? And when they opened it up, what they instead found was like a tunnel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Awesome.
they were like, okay, do we go down? And so they started to go down in the tunnel.
Yeah.
Right. And they found like a human femur, like in the tunnel that was like a fresh human
Yeah. Oh
femur.
yeah. Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
wasn't like a desiccated one from like
Yeah.
hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
And so they were like, okay. And that's when they heard this like scratching sound like on the stone, and I kind of made this scratching sound on the wall, like I was doing it, and it was a spontaneous action on my part. I did not
Yeah.
plan this.
Yeah.
I just did it, and everybody immediately like did this.
You're like, what's going on?
Everybody just immediately was
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Yeah.
It spooked me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, because we were really imagining that being in a dark tunnel, and there's something up ahead of you. You don't know what it is, and you can kind of hear it, and then you hear this kind of scratching sound.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, and that's. I mean, I think that from my perspective is sort of role playing when it's at its best is when everybody is suspended disbelief to the point that like you're there, you know, and you're like, okay, this is what, like, you know, and there have been in my memory, like I have. It's funny, I have these like. They're frozen in, sorry for the pun, no, but they're frozen in amber moments throughout my role-playing career where there have been these like, I'm like, that was a fucking gem of a moment that I will hold on to forever, you know? And that definitely sounds like one of those where you're like, okay, yeah, this was as real as it gets without actually being real, you know? And that's amazing.
Yeah. Like that was a good couple of sessions, and it was just I hadn't kind of realized at that time that Cthulhu is it's an odd game because it almost works better, and you can do a campaign in it totally.
Yeah.
Campaigns are fun, but there is a kind of extra sort of frisson to a short Cthulhu game, because what happens is generally my experience is you have like 2 or 3 sessions. First session is a lot of like legwork and investigation, kind of very mundane, but then like it's gradually increasing tension. And then usually by the second or third session, just all hell breaks loose. Usually by that point. And what happens is the player characters, because they kind of are thinking like, well, this isn't like, I'm not invested in this character for like a 40 session campaign or something like that. Like, so it's okay if this dude just dies or goes crazy or whatever. That it's like a horror movie. So it has kind of like I think there's a kind of intensity to those short Cthulhu games that are really a lot of fun. I haven't done as much the long campaign thing where we see people gradually going insane.
Yeah, you know, in fact, you're totally right about that, because once, I mean, of course, when we first started playing Cthulhu, which was 1,000 years ago, I was like, well, how do I make the most effective? Like, I want a badass PI, or I want to be like, but then as we sort of matured as gamers, like I was like, oh yeah, how do I come with an interesting character that like somebody that might be just adjacent to the world that is Cthulhu, that it's an easy on-ramp onto, you know, all of the chaos. And then I'm not going to be married to this guy. So I can do things that are true to his character without needing to preserve necessarily like the essence of it. Like he can do things that so and it was really fun, because like then I was making old cantankerous guys, and I was making like, you know, like a security guard, you know.
Yeah, one of my favorite characters of yours, I don't know if you remember his name, but Isaac Wilhelm Schur.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, yeah, that's it, right.
And I think I still have his character sheet.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because I remember he had a like a photography jacket with all the pockets, and I had decided like what all the things were in his pockets. So he was like, so I had string, and I had like you know, like, but I had, what was it? What's the gum that was used for erasing? But it was like Arabic gum or something like that. But like I had all the things like decided, like I was like, oh yeah, this, and that was like, and he was a medieval. No, he was Arthurian. Yeah, Arthurian mythos was his main thing. So yeah, how does Arthurian mythos help against Cthulhu? But
what detail you created about him that I loved was that he owned a car,
oh,
right?
that's right, he couldn't drive.
This is like 19 like really early days, like, and it's like in this small town in New England, right? So he would I don't know, he would like read while he was driving.
Yeah. He couldn't drive. First off, he couldn't drive very well, and and then he was always distracted. Like he's the exact driver that drives me insane. Like he's like, yeah, that's so funny. And he would just park in random ways, this oh, I'm getting out, and just leave the car. Yeah, that's so funny. I don't think I've ever min-maxed. I don't think I ever min-maxed. So this is Sam saying, I don't think I ever min-maxed except for when I couldn't mechanically make the character I played for you work. Oh yeah, made it work. Yeah, see, it's funny. I mean, I certainly as a kid, you at least the way I operated was I was a big min-maxer. Like I was like, oh yeah, like this is the kind of character I want, and I want him to be the most effective at this. But as I got a little bit older, I started to realize that there was a lot more nuance. There was a lot more nuance in having an idea of where you, like, starting with this is the character you have, and this is where you want that character to go, And then, of course, and then the story and the things that happen. In fact, I think that was the most fun for me in our last Amber campaign, which was really like I know we did some stuff after that, but that was kind of right as I was getting ready to move to Austin. I didn't know I was moving to Austin, but
yeah, the Star Trek game was the significant game we did after that.
Yeah, and that was awesome.
The Amber game was the big one.
Yeah. And in fact, that's even like I remember all of the Star Trek things that we've ever done have had, for whatever reason, like it's such a hallowed franchise that it's just been fun to like spend some time in that world and do and I do, man, just that, yeah, that's so crazy. It doesn't break my heart that we didn't finish that because I'm like, I had a lot of things I wanted to do.
Yeah. That's a game that I think Stephanie and Mike and I all, and you, I think all look back on pretty fondly, even though it didn't run for super long, but it was crazy. It also had a totally unique feature, which was that there were 3 GMs, right?
Yeah.
Basically, who were running the game, and we would and it was perfect.
Yeah.
Star Trek, because literally it was like, now it was the next episode.
Yeah. And so different directors.
Different directors, different writers, and coming on and offering their perspective on what's happening to this crew. And we all had characters, and then it would just slightly shift so that when I was running the game, my character would now be effectively an NPC temporarily.
Yeah.
And it was cool because then you knew it was just going to come around again.
Yeah. In fact, and that, it's funny, like, and I do, man, it's so crazy. Like, I really, I mean, obviously we didn't invent this kind of thing, but it did, these kinds of things did happen to us organically. We're like, oh, we like to participate. We like to be participants. We also like to like head up the story and develop, like, and it's crazy. Like, it breaks my, like, it's funny, man. I think that, like, if role-playing was used to teach history in school as a kid, so like, okay, let us deal with the American Revolution, and you guys are the British, and these are your motivations, and you guys are the are the New Worlders, and this is your motivation, and you're the Puritans, and this or whatever, and I think that when you do that and putting yourself in the shoes of somebody else and understanding their perspective has like such an intense ability for you to like empathize and really like be like, oh, I get that. Like I can see why the South would want to maintain slaves, because it was like free, like it undermined their entire economic thing. And so they were willing to overlook the ethical and the moral issues because they were like, it was making sure that everybody was able to eat, And so it just forces you to like kind of like look at things at sort of all levels. So you can go high level, you can look at things from the idea perspective. You can also get down to like the nitty gritty and be like, oh yeah, this is what's happening on boots on the ground.
Right, you can consider the perspectives of people. I mean, it's like fiction, but a little bit different because it's sort of this weird constellation somewhere between fiction, improv theater, and then like there's the game part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It sort of all sort of constellates together, and and this is the thing I think you were kind of lamenting earlier was that it's ephemeral too.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's an event that happens, and it's like a musical performance, right, Mike?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
gone.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And you can record it in various ways. So like literally now people do record it and look,
Yeah. Of course,
on the internet
yeah,
now, right?
yeah.
But back then, especially, like that wasn't a thing. And so like, you know, you might have a journal or something. You sort of kept a game log or something like that. But we were pretty bad about doing that.
Yeah, we really were. Yeah, in fact, it's crazy because I think about I think about all of the people I've gamed with. In fact, there are a bunch of people that we gamed with, like Danny and Donald, and I don't really remember what games we were playing. I just remember I was like this is crazy. I remember hanging out with these guys. I don't remember playing what games we were playing and what we were doing. You know, like again, I think because the motivations, like the people that I gravitated towards, or the people that really I still really like, were the people that they cared more about the story and the characters than they did about being badass, you know.
Well, there was I think the game you're referring to is the Cyberpunk game that I initially ran, and there was a faction of players in that who like they kind of became adversarial with you and Eric in particular.
Okay.
And so you and Eric went off and like created like Jury and Quest.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
No. Jury and
Scarlet and Quest. Yeah, no.
Quest, that was you and Ron.
Oh, that's right. That was Ron. Yeah.
You had a corporate guy, and I can't remember what his name was.
Yeah.
But he was like he went with Eric's solo character.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wow. That's right.
And I can't remember what your corporate guy's name was,
Yeah.
but they were both like you want to talk about min-maxing, Mike? You guys were like, because you guys basically created these characters as like, we're gonna just screw those guys.
Yeah.
You sat down and were like, all right, and like Eric made some like insane roles, and then also you were like, okay, I'm like, you gave yourself this super high corporate ability,
Yeah.
and then you were like, I'll just bankroll everything, Eric. It's all this like heavy weaponry and stuff like that, cybernetics. You were just like, I'll just give him everything, you know?
Yeah. In fact,
spend all this money, right?
Yeah. In fact, I do remember that was a cool thing. That was really fun. Like there was a lot of holes in Cyberpunk in terms of like how all of that stuff operated, you know, and so we eventually quantified, like we're like, oh, this is the levels that you can do, like this is the kind of stuff you can do with certain levels of, you know.
You guys made me like really desperate because you guys were like unkillable, like like machines. After a while, you just like it was just unstoppable. Finally, I got a supplement where they had like insane stuff in it. Like they had like depleted uranium rounds like were in like some of the weaponry that did like insane armor piercing damage. And so like I finally could like hurt Eric's character. I was like, oh. And so like, Eric was just aghast when he saw how many. He's like, "Oh, I've been shot by this thing," and he was like telling me. And then I like told him how many dice of damage. It was just like, whoa.
That's so funny, and of course, of course, it was Cyberpunk that was the thing that we're just gonna lean into the min-max because it was a system where you could really tweak, you know, you could just keep leaning into your particular specialty and just start destroying, you know.
There was a solo adventure where Eric tried to break into a corporate facility, and that's like probably my most intense memory of Cyberpunk. And then the other one is the Jester's game.
Oh yes,
Jamie, you and Eric, and there was this moment that was just like encapsulated the complete like sociopathic monsters that your characters were, where like your character, there's a homeless man and your character like gives him some money, and then Jamie walks up punches him, and then Eric, he knocks out the homeless guy, so he's knocked out now, and then Eric picks up the money and pockets. Like that was literally like what happened in the game. Like it was just like emblematic of just what awful people these days.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, no, that's
I mean, you know,
it's funny that's it is really fun. I would be curious to see how Jamie games today, because he definitely liked to start as somebody that was that had like sort of a moral center, and then he just liked to watch that moral center crumble until he became like this like arch evil.
I'm in a game group with Ron and Jamie.
Oh, awesome!
And then James was playing with us for a period of time. So
yeah. Oh, cool. Jim, you mean Jim Martin?
No.
Oh, James Sledge. Yes. Yeah.
He joined our group.
Awesome.
And Daniel plays with us too.
Oh,
So,
awesome! Wow.
So,
yeah.
And we ran.
I still think of Daniel as 7 years old, so that's I was like, wow, a 7-year-old, huh?
He's an adult in his 20s and has
Yeah.
a job.
Yeah. That would make me 23 or 24. That's impossible. No.
So, yeah, and he has like all the 5e books and stuff, and we played 5e for a while.
Awesome.
But now we are on hiatus for that, and I started running Top Secret for them. Actually.
Oh, hey, cool.
I gave
Awesome.
them a choice. I was like, here's the games I want to run, and look, everybody kind of, I think partly for nostalgia, Ron especially was like, hey, let's play Top Secret.
Yeah, that's great. And so are they kind of like a Mission Impossible kind of group? Like each of them complimentary, or is it just a bunch of like 00 agents all forced to work together?
Well, I tried to like lean into, because I've been like, what I tried to do is lean into the stuff that like when I was younger, that I was kind of informing my Top Secret games that never fully realized it.
Yeah.
So I kind of, it's a bit of a grittier, more realistic campaign.
Okay,
and
cool.
it's set in Berlin in 1975.
Oh, cool.
And so like I ended up doing all this like research about Berlin and what that's like and stuff. And they're part of a made up spy organization called Widow. And it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. But it's so there's still the wall, and there's still East Germany, and it's still that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I started reading about all this stuff, and it's like crazy stuff, because I had to be like, okay, I want to like, so I made like a list of like landmarks in Berlin and stuff like that.
Cool.
So I have like a little notebook that just has all my like notes in it.
Yeah, that's in fact that's one of the, I think, my favorite things about developing a world, particularly if you're doing something in the like. Because you do so much research. Like the thing is like just like, and it's funny because literally like 90% of the research you do doesn't actually get used, but it's just like you need to digest the environment so you can describe it in a way that you feel confident is a reflection of at least your understanding of that environment, you know. And it's
like one of the things I found out was there was a Stasi prison in East Germany. And this is just like one random thing I found out, was that when the wall fell, that prison wasn't one of the places that got, because a lot of these Stasi places got raided by people who were like trying to like hey, we're trying to reclaim the state and everything like that. Because the Stasi were the East German secret police, basically.
Yeah, of course.
And this Stasi prison though, where it wasn't raided because it was so secret, no one knew about it.
Oh wow.
And so like the staff there and the people there were destroyed most of the records. So like we don't know, like a lot of the Stasi stuff, we have like records of that stuff.
Sure.
Like, this prison they don't, and they did awful stuff to people there,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
But anyway, so the only like records of that prison, the prison is now a museum, by the way. It's basically, they had to like take testimonials of people who were in prison there. And things like that.
just to get a good sense of what was going on, because the staff were like, we don't know anything, and we destroyed all the records, and so
records,
wow.
Right?
Yeah, so it's like the guy next to me was screaming and was saying, oh, the fucking tentacles and the evil, and you're like, oh, what's that? Hey Abby, how you doing? That's awesome, man. Like that's
So those are the rabbit holes you can go down if you're not careful.
But again, and hey, thank you so much, Sam. It's yeah, absolutely, brother. It's great to have you here, man. And yeah, you have enjoy your stream, and I look forward to catching it soon. And for those of you that don't know, that aren't following TSCN Sam, he's actually a podcast. Like, man, just go to TSCN Sam. Is it .com or .org? I mean, I know that if you just search his name, you should be able to. If you Google his name, hey, Rich Roadshow, how you doing, man? You should be able to find like that's right, TSCN.TV. So he just has his hands in a bunch of different pies. And he's got a ton of different podcasts, and they all kind of operate at different trajectories, but he's just one of those, again, like most of the people I know, does things prolifically. So check him out and support what he does. And yeah, thank you, brother. Thank you for stopping by. Having a rough one, surprise show tonight I'm sorry to hear that, Retro Road Show. Well, then hang out with us for a couple minutes, and you will be paid out in goodwill. And goodwill is worth, a little bit less than a penny for every 6 or 7 years of goodwill that you give. So that's great. But so we were talking about, yes, yeah, that's like, yes. So we were just talking about, like, when role playing, when you're putting together campaigns, or even for me, it's really funny. Even when I developed, so we did a Vampire the Masquerade, our very first Vampire the Masquerade campaign that we did. I decided again, this was a little bit min-maxing of from my perspective, but it's really funny. I was like, oh, I see that there's a lot of advantage to being an older vampire and having your generation, like, so I poured all of my points into making him old, and then what I did is I developed his entire history. I was like, he's born in 1637 in France, and I literally and this is a point in time, this is before Google, so I literally went to the encyclopedias and I just read the history of France, and I just plugged him in all of the historic moments. I was like, oh, and he did this, and he was an adjunct of Cardinal Mazarin, and like all. So I just created his entire, like, the entire timeline, and I did it all in paper. I did it in pen in a notebook that So that was really, it was really it's really cool to get that in depth in something, because again, like by the time before we played our first session, I was like, I know who this guy is. And then the great thing was, and he wasn't like, he wasn't played, at least not initially, he wasn't played as a badass, but ultimately, like, he was an artist. He was the first time I'd played I'm an artist, and he was a dancer, he's, of course, ballet, but it was just crazy,
This is interesting because, like, that was like a very 90s way to game. We were thoroughly, that was in the 90s when that happened.
Yeah.
And but it was like, there was a thing that had happened in the 90s, because there was this previous way of gaming, like in the 70s and 80s, where it was now what people call, murder hobo kind of D&D gaming, where you just literally, it's just, hey man, kick the door in and kill the goblins, like that kind of thing. And that is awesome. I mean, I do love that game. I know you have a lot of affection for that too. But like, by the time 1990 rolled around, we were a little bit older and we wanted a little more out of our role playing. And so we were doing things like writing massive backstories for player characters and things like that. And that was like, a lot of people had gotten to that point. And this is the other thing. There's a guy online who's a very popular D&D YouTuber, Matt Covell, and he's talked about this a few times. And I remember this too, because he's like, man, I don't think people understand how today it seems kind of hard for people who are in the midst of the RPG scene today, that how unimportant Dungeons and Dragons was in the mid 1990s.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It was not a cool game at all.
Yeah.
It was like, he's described it as that at Gen Con at that time, people would be like, man, wasn't that game from the 70s?
Well, no, in fact, the reason why is because it was owned by Lorraine Williams, and right. Lorraine was the queen of spectacle, and she like literally, like, she walked around like she was like the 900-pound gorilla, and so she just burned a lot of the goodwill that she has, like Like she became the face of TSR. Like the only reason why I know this is because I worked with her. We were developing the TSR the Dungeons and Dragons live action movie for a little while at Universal, which like it ultimately ended up getting made and it was terrible. Of course, it was terrible, but the thing is like so yeah, but the great thing is like that led us to Gen Con, where I got to hang out with Eric Wujik and a bunch of and Jim Ward and a bunch of guys that were like luminaries that I will forever. It breaks my heart that I didn't maintain those relationships, but the thing is like D&D was a joke until Wizards of the Coast bought it and kind of revivified it. It was still a game that I had a lot of fondness for. But by the time that they were putting out Terror Tracks and doing the dice, because remember it was Magic the Gathering was a big collectible, and so TSR came up with collectible dice, and they had it was a dice game where you'd roll and you could trade the dice, and I forget what it was called, but yeah. So they were trying to, but Lorraine was a marketer, she was like a publishing person, and so. So
there was and her family owned Buck Rogers, right?
Yes.
Too. So the Dill family,
yeah,
right?
Yep.
So there's a book about this, Mike. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a book now there's two books actually that are really worth checking out if you want to know the whole history of this early part of the business side of D&D. And there's a game called Game Wizards by John Peterson, and that covers basically the creation of Dungeons and Dragons and Gary Gygax up through his ousting.
Okay, yeah.
Right, basically in 1985 or whenever that happened.
Yeah.
And then there's another book that kind of does a little bit of that stuff, but picks up from after that, and it's called Slaying the Dragon, and it basically is about the Williams era TSR and its collapse and purchase by Wizards of the Coast. And so that's a book that you probably would have some insight in. There's some absolutely insane stuff that they had set up about how they ran their business that basically meant that TSR was going to lose money. They didn't even know really how many books they were actually selling.
Oh wow!
And it was this the way they had set this up. It was just they were driving for a cliff.
Yeah,
basically, and it was because Lorraine, I guess, had a kind of investment mindset about how to run the company, and it wasn't really a mindset that was set up for actual retail business, like a game company.
which is really funny because I think that she did. I think that she saw that it did have huge potential as a I think if she was doing what she was doing right now in this day and age, if D&D had been kind of ignored and now she would have probably been amazing. But the thing is but she was just 15 years ahead of because she wanted to be everywhere all at once. So she just wanted her hands in all the pies, and and that was why she was so into working with us. But also, and she was big into spectacle, and she was big into they built a fucking castle for Gen. I was at Gen Con in 1996, and they built a fucking castle, and and it was a spectacle, and it was great, but I was like, what the fuck?
Well, it's funny, Mike, because that's right in the midst of them about to collapse.
Yeah. And I do know that. Oh yeah, it's really funny. When Terror Tracks came out, so Terror Tracks was like a choose your own adventure, but it was on CD, and you would if you wanted, so it was like choose your own adventure. So they'd say if you wanted, and it was put out by TSR, and it was if you want to slay the white, or if you want to slay the white, go to track 42, and if you want to run away, go to track 68. And so you would click through to do this thing. And Flint Dilley, who was Lorraine Williams' brother, was the spearhead behind this. And I was like, why is it not on TSR Records? And they're like, oh, there's some there's some family label based in Calabasas that's like, and they were so spiteful. And turns out Get Set Go signed our first record deal with TSR Records like 10 years later. I was like, oh, it's you guys. That's so great. Lorraine Williams hated you. And they're like, we know. That's so great. Like apparently Lorraine Williams like showed up and like offered them like $50,000 or something like that for their like, and again, TSR Records, they weren't a huge label, but they had some very successful artists. And so like whatever she offered them, it was like an insult. And they're like, what? Like, why would you even know? There's no way. So Lorraine, of course, was all upset. That's so funny.
She's kind of alternatively portrayed as, I think for many years she was looked at as like a villain.
Yeah,
in the RPG industry, and I think that the Slaying the Dragon book at least does some toward like not exactly rehabilitating her, but at least acknowledging she's a complicated.
And it's really funny because there was, I mean, you could tell that I think that she really, I mean, this is just my personal interactions with her, but I could tell like she definitely did love gamers. Like she loved how obsessive they got into it and how like I think that was the thing. I think that she saw that these people are fucking diehard hardcore. If we can just tap into this and get them excited about something, they will be lifetime fans and will be lifetime revenue generating machines, you know, which is true, you know, like I still to this day have spent a lot more money than I should on like, you know, but you know, I think that she saw that, and I think that she also, I think she also was excited by it. I don't think she fully understood it. Same thing with Flint. Like anyway. But even so, whatever. I can't say. I was only on the outside. I was on the outside looking in. But we interacted with them, you know, almost on a daily basis for about a year and a half. And so I got a pretty close look at like, and it was like literally just as the whole thing was going down. She ended up selling. Maybe a year after we left. I think it was in '97 they sold to WotC. Yeah. So yeah, and I left Universal in June of '96. So it wasn't much later after that.
And then that took a while. There's like a transfer thing that happened.
Yeah.
So even though stuff was still coming out from TSR, Wizards was kind of still effectively controlling that, and then eventually everything just transferred over to Seattle. Yeah, man, it's so crazy, you know, and it's so interesting to me to see how gaming, because gaming was, I mean, we were the geeks of geeks. Like the thing is that like, you know, like it was like there was nothing you could do that was geekier. You know, I mean, maybe wearing a pocket protector and putting tape around your glasses, you know, which of course I did as a kid. You know, This is like a time period. It's also where if you showed up at school with a copy of The Hobbit, you know, somebody might beat you up.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
It's weird to think about now, but that's literally like what it was kind of like.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and there was, and it's really funny because there was a little bit of religious persecution involved in that as well. Like, you know, like the thing is like there was this like kind of like, oh, you're into devil shit. And I'm like, no, I just like gaming. Like, yeah, I like fantasy. I like the idea of magic. That's magic's from the devil. No, magic's just an idea.
Story. I should probably mention this. I do have a YouTube channel where I talk about role-playing games occasionally, although it's not very active. So you know, feel free to check that out. But,
No. Give us the link. Can you put the link in the chat? And then hold on. And the Retro Roadshow asks, is Lorraine Williams related to the current Wizard president Cynthia Williams?
No,
I feel like she's doing almost the exact same thing.
Yeah, no. I don't believe she has any relationship to Cynthia Williams. Cynthia Williams is a Microsoft person, and Lorraine Williams was somebody who came out of like just like the Buck Rogers stuff and publishing, as you mentioned.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because so I did know. It's funny. I did know that they were obviously the scions of the creator of Buck Rogers, but but again, the way she was introduced to me, and again, this is me in my early 20s, that she was a publishing magnate, and that and that she was going to be the salvation. Like she was gonna level up the role playing game world. Like that was how it was sold to me. So and they're like, and of course they bring the kid in. Hey, and Mike's a big gamer, and and of course, and at this point in time, I knew everything about every single fucking game. Like I played every single game I've read. Like, and so I was like, yeah, this is great. So I was like, oh, you're doing D&D, and you want to update it for this, like, again, because there was a renaissance of games kind of happening at this point in time where there was the White Wolf stuff was happening, and cyberpunk was kicking ass, and then there were like the meta games like Amber the Dice's role playing game. Like there was just a whole new like frothing life to gaming, and I was like, oh, that's gonna be great. Like that'll be so exciting to see what TSR does. And then it became Dice and TerraTrax and like a bunch of things that like I was like, oh, okay, this is but there was a point in time where like, so I didn't realize that, like, oh yeah, she's a little bit of a crazy person, and so until later.
But they didn't. There was a couple of things that they should have done, man. Is because in some ways, like there was this whole thing where it's like people stopped kind of believing in D&D as a product. It's sort of like they sort of like were like, no, we have to like turn it into one of those other games.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're gonna make it a storytelling game. That kind of thing. And I'm like, man, that is not what D&D is. You know what I mean? I mean, you can tell stories in D&D, sure, but that what I mean is it's not like one of the White Wolf games. It's got a whole other agenda about what makes it fun. You know what I mean?
Well, and even there's even like, I mean, just the dice. There's a lot of iconic attributes to D&D that you don't want to do. Like if you change them, it's no longer D&D. So you want to embrace that, and then you want to find a way to make the game a little bit more accessible and a little bit more fun. And like the thing is like AD&D, like as you got deeper, and like, I mean, I love Pathfinder, and I actually ran a campaign online here on this exact channel years ago where we did a Pathfinder 3.5 game, and it was awesome. But that's sort of advanced gaming. So if you want to like find new people and get them into it, like throwing 10,000 rules at them is gonna is gonna be like so. So it really was awesome when they came with the D20 system, but at the same time it didn't eliminate all the other dice. It still allowed for, like, it took all of the character tropes, but it added new stuff. It added like the Dragonlance stuff was popular, so let's find an easy on ramp to that stuff. Let's not walk away from the things that made D&D amazing, and I think that WotC's been doing a pretty good job. Now again, I don't know anything about Cynthia Williams because I haven't been paying attention that much. But
right, well, there's this whole kerfuffle going on right now with WotC because they basically have burned. They basically angered everybody in the entire industry.
Good for them. Good for them.
And because what they wanted to do, Mike, was effectively deauthorize the OGL, which would mean, and so it was kind of them like possible. So people like Pathfinder and all these other people were suddenly like, wait a minute, am I gonna be able to like publish my game next week? It just suddenly created, and now because there was and they kind of walked it back, but now there's all of this distrust, and so people are like, look, I don't think I can trust them anymore.
Of course, because if you're gonna build, you're like we're gonna build on this platform, and then they pull the rug out from underneath you, and you've got a successful business that is now, the copyright is called into question. Like, that's fucking horseshit, and so to even talk about that is insanity. Because
it's even worse than that if you
go.
Really? There's a bunch of videos about it, because there was all these clauses that were in the new version of the OGL, which they wanted everybody to sign, that were pretty egregious.
God.
And like there were a bunch of lawyers online who kind of went through it and talked about it, who were like also gamers. And people looked at it and were like, hey, this thing looks pretty bad. And pretty much every game company who is doing an OGL thing, like they've all now pretty much like walked away from that. And there's a lot of companies that are like, hey, like we're developing our own open licenses now, and trying to just move. And because here's the thing, there's a lot of these questions that legally never have been settled about because it's established you can't copyright game mechanics.
Like,
for example, like game mechanics and like a game of poker or something, like somebody can't
Yeah,
like
sure. Say I own this now. Yeah, yeah,
right,
yeah,
so you
yeah.
can't do that. What you can copyright is the presentation of the
Sure,
rules,
sure.
and so that's what a lot of this is about. But there's also some questions about when does something become like what is a trademark of Wizards of the
What?
Coast isn't, and
Yeah.
all this, and so like a lot of these questions have never been settled in court. And here's the thing: Wizards probably doesn't want a lot of these things to go to court because it's quite possible that these things are so
They could lose. Yeah,
possible
yeah,
that they could lose.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And so like, and if that happened, then it would just be established that like, hey, like now you can just go run riot and do this stuff without their permission.
Yeah, no, which actually brings me to something I wanted to broach, so obviously we've been gaming for a long time. A lot of our friends are pretty well spoken and also pretty decent writers. We Square Tire Records, my record label, we are adding a publishing arm to our thing. My buddy Joe Clifford, who is a sort of a celebrated novelist, he's got some other publishing friends, and he wants to do some things. I've got my songbooks. Oh, you can't see them here because but I've published some songbooks. But we're gonna start a publishing arm that's gonna be kind of operate just like Square Tire Records, where each individual entity kind of runs their own business, but we're all banded. Like, we're concerned. All of us kind of like we pool our efforts and pool our resources to achieve certain things. So I think that it might be fun to maybe get the gaming friends together and maybe develop like a little system and game thing that we could do, because I've got artists, and I've got like, I think it'd be fun to just like sit down and maybe figure something out that could be a kind of story focused, but also have some interesting and fun game mechanics that, like, you know.
Yeah, well, there's also like, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but like the indie RPG scene right now, in the last 20 years, really, and that's just the last years, man, some of those games are beautiful.
Yeah. No, yeah, I've seen them. Yeah,
self-published games that are just.
I've seen Kickstarters. I've seen Kickstarters that are just like, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, just go, yeah. And but what I was thinking, it might be fun to kind of go and do like the Ziploc, like kind of go like just do a small little rules thing and do the old like classic style in the Ziploc sleeves. Yeah. Because wasn't that, I think that's how chainmail was originally delivered, right? I think the very first one
I think it came with it was like Spiral Bound or something.
Yeah, but if I remember correctly, wasn't it? Yeah, because it was a Spiral Bound thing. Oh, maybe it was later. But I do anyway. I don't know. But anyway, I just think it'd be fun to go and do kind of classic gaming approaches and just offer like little, like here's a basic framework for like like the rudiments of a game. And then, and just do it in a classic, like old, like 1970s, 1980s style, like thing. And then if it catches on, then we expand it into something bigger and beautiful. So that it's not an enormous financial investment, but it's also cool, and it also kind of harkens back to it. So that
sounds super interesting and super cool, man.
Yeah,
I am down.
Okay.
I'm always thinking about games. I got notebooks full of games.
Yeah. Well, no, and that's what I was thinking. Like, so there are games I see like the things that I've developed over the course of my life that I never really saw to fruition that I think would be fun is like the samurai game where you have different like schools of like, and the fights, like the actual fights happen in just like you do all the prepping and all the things, and you just go and it's like a couple rolls and then bam, it's over. That kind of thing, so I think that could be just doing feudal Japan, like Tokugawa's period shogunate kind of thing. That could be really fun. And again, like Lone Wolf and Cub, like it's just fast. It's fast action, I thought that could be cool because that could be definitely something you could do in an evening's gaming and just be. But the thing is that, I do know that James has ideas. You have ideas. I'm certain Eric has like it would just be fun for all of us to like sit down and be like, hey, let us figure out something that could and just do a little development stuff where maybe every 6 months we put out another little thing because because. Right now, Joe is in the process of putting together our entire publishing, he's sorting out all these issues. So we could just plug into that and go. So I want to see that idea.
No, that's super interesting, super exciting. I just, when you were talking about chainmail earlier, I'm wondering, because you were talking about the Ziploc games.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, are you thinking about, because like Steve Jackson games, that's how he initially put out Car Wars and all these other
Yep,
things,
yep, yep.
like Ziploc games. But Melee was the first one.
Melee. That's it. That's the one I'm thinking of. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
and
yes.
it was a gladiatorial fighting game.
Yes.
Super simple. By the way, you can buy that. He didn't have the rights to that for many years because Metagaming, Howard Thompson, who owned that company, refused to sell him the rights when he left Metagaming.
Oh God.
And then he formed Steve Jackson Games.
Oh,
Right?
oh yeah, yeah.
And then what happened was, because Howard Thompson was like, I want like $500,000 for
Yeah,
the rights.
yeah.
Fantasy, which was the gaming company, the role playing game that evolved out of Melee.
You know.
And then he basically turned that into GURPS, sort of like
Yeah,
he took
yeah.
that into GURPS. But the thing is that he got the rights back to the fantasy trip, because what happened is there's that U.S. copyright.
Oh yeah,
thing.
35 years.
Yeah.
When you
So
that's
Steve
awesome.
Jackson got it,
Good
and
for
he
him.
Good
for him.
So you can buy Melee.
Yeah,
now,
that's great.
And Wizard.
That's great.
The Magic game.
You know, in fact, now that you mention it, you just reminded me, because the reason why, so Melee, when walking up to the gamekeeper in the Palm Desert Town Center in 1980, they had Melee on a little like display stand right at the thing, and I was like oh, and the guy that was talking about it, because of course I just go in and talk, and hey, look what, and he was saying that because Melee, because chainmail was a gladiatorial combat thing, and so
it was medieval.
Yeah,
Yes.
but there was some connection that he brought up, and I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is the original but you're right, because it was Steve Jackson, and that's so crazy. That is awesome. And so I remember, by the time I had money enough to buy it, which was like 6 months later when I started working at, it was gone. And then so I just picked up the next one, which was Car Wars. But that's so crazy but you're right. It was Melee. Wow. That's awesome.
And I think what happened is that Metagaming folded not long after. Like, I think they folded in like '83.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So it was like not long, probably after you saw it.
Yeah.
The game with print.
Yeah.
And then remained out of print until like a few years ago.
Yeah. Wow, that's just nuts.
In which Steve Jackson Games got the rights back. But that's a cool little game. Like, there's a lot of, I know you love Car Wars so much. There's a lot of like, just the way he designs games, there's a lot of like that thought, kind of careful thought of like, oh hey, this is kind of like, it feels kind of real, but it also is just a fun game thing.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
this balance you get in Car Wars, like it's you get that in Melee too. Like
yeah,
that's such a really well designed little game.
Yeah, he does. For whatever reason, like, he just develops games that are that on their surface are just really fun to play. Like, it's just fun to roll and see, kind of like, the game mechanics are at their core are not super confusing. I mean, even like I think that when I first really got into Steve Jackson No, actually, Car Wars was the first. But then I found the Steve Jackson RPGs, not RPGs, the books, the Choose Your Own Adventure books that also had a dice component. You had a little character sheet.
That's the other Steve Jackson, though.
Yeah. Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
There's two Steve Jacksons.
Yeah.
I thought they were the same guy this whole time. Oh my God! Because they both had because they both had a 6-sided die, like focus at times. That's nuts. There was a different guy.
Steve Jackson, I think he's one of the founders of Games Workshop.
What? Now you've just blown my mind. You have just blown my mind. That is what? There's two Steve Jacksons that are both game designers, and they both had attributes that were 6-sided dice focus. So I could easily. That's so crazy. Yeah, because of course I didn't do any homework on these people. I was like, oh, Steve Jackson. I like this guy. That's so funny.
Yeah, so the Lone Wolf books, right?
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's Steve Jackson is in the UK.
Oh,
and then
wow.
There's Car Wars and Melee and all the GURP stuff.
Yeah. Wow, I totally thought, I was like, man, this guy just fucking does everything.
I didn't know that either.
That's so crazy. That's nuts, man. Well, that's good to know. Then I have to go meet that Steve Jackson too. but yeah, man, that's well. So okay, so I do want to like throw that postulate out. I've obviously I've got a ton of stuff on my plate, but even so, I think I'm gonna have a ton of stuff on my plate until the day I die. So I do think that just we can just budget in time and figure some stuff out. But I do like I would like to like I think it would be fun to get together with all of the folks that dig games and just talk about like what is missing from the gaming world that maybe we could throw some thoughts against, because I mean I know there's not really any area of potential gaming that hasn't been like
there's more games coming out all the time.
Yeah. But again, I do think that if we were like doing cheap, cool, fun, easy to play games that had role playing elements that you could do in a one night session might be a great way to just start, and then we could kind of build out from there. But anyway, but yeah, so I'm in the business building business right now, and so we might as well we might as well talk.
The other thing that you really love, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing is like for me, like that's now finally getting back. So I've got a D&D group here, and we're doing an Icewind Dale campaign. And of course I love the Forgotten Realms, but I never really gave a fuck about Icewind Dale ever at all. But I'm having a great time. But I'm realizing that like that like there's just a lot of nuance. I mean, and the great thing is my group is very story focused, and all the characters are very well realized, and it's awesome. But there's still there's just a lot of like awesome nuance that I've experienced with my with you and James and Ron, and I mean even the Mechton camp, like Mechton is a giant robots game, but man, it like what a powerful story. I think it'd be fun to see if we couldn't find a way to like create a roadmap for how to capture that, and I know other people have, and I know that there are a lot of them out there, but like maybe we can do our own thing that just to be a part of, it's a great time to be like, it's not as brand new as podcasting, but it's still a pretty brand new art form, and it'd be nice to
absolutely. We're still just figuring this out. But yeah, it's and it keeps changing all the time. So I probably should go in a second.
Of course. So Retro Roadshow, just before we go, Retro Roadshow says, I think the idea of part agnostic games could take off. If you really want to hit everyone, make a system that adapts to any method of rolling, have rules for D20, D6, roll spinners. Basically, if you have a board game at home, you have the basic pieces to start. Oh yeah, you are right about that. Yeah, like finding something that doesn't require, like doing a D6 thing, or doing something, or even doing something with like playing cards or coin, like doing something that's or Uno cards, doing something that where everybody has the attributes right there, and then they can pick it up and they can play like that. That I think would be a great entree,
Yeah. There's an amazing little game that I don't know that it's in print anymore because the license keeps dropping, and it was designed by Greg Stafford.
Awesome.
Which was published originally by Chaosium, and then was republished by a company a few years ago, and then that disappeared. It was basically part of a Kickstarter, but it's the Prince Valiant role-playing game, and
cool.
It's based on the comic strip, but it uses coins.
Awesome.
You get like coins and that you flip a bunch of coins to do things and stuff. It's basically one of the simplest role-playing games I've ever seen, but it's incredibly well designed and was like also massively influential, like on a lot of designers.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
and we're like, oh hey, Greg's really like broken it down here.
Yeah, of course it's great. Of course it's great. Like Greg Stafford, like of course, yeah. Like right. I want to spend.
Also,
oh, go ahead.
I didn't know this, but Mark Rain-Hagen cribbed the whole dice pool system from Vampire from the Ghostbusters role-playing game, which was designed by Greg Stafford.
Yeah. That's of course that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's the awesome thing. And I don't know if there is any bad blood between when that kind of stuff happens. But from my perspective, like it feels to me like they're like. like as long as you're as long as you're a gamer, like of course you're gonna be like, yeah, of course, dude, you do like because it's not it's not so much the like because the mechanics are just in service of the story. The mechanics are in service of the world, you know? So you want to find something that captures the best way to reflect the world in a way that feels immediate and feels visceral and feels like, yes, that was amazing, you know? And also, but also gives you like, that's why you have the random element. Like you get those like, oh my God, I just got a natural 20, or I just like, you know, I got three heads. Like I just threw 3 coins and they're all heads. Oh my God, you know? And it just adds that element of like, yes, you know? That you can't get without having the random component. But all right, you got to go, man. Let me see. So Retro Roadshow says, yeah, that would be like saying you use music theory to make a song. You ripped me off, man. Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for hanging out. And
Take care, Mike.
and let's.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome, man. And let's do this again at some point. And I'll reach out about the idea of the gaming thing. But yeah, thank you, Rich Roadshow, and adios, brother. Thanks so much, Nick. Yeah, so that's my buddy Nick, man, and Nick, yeah, so you know, yeah, and he is a little bit of a gaming scholar. Like he actually has a YouTube channel that he was talking about. You might want to check him out. Nick Bielik. It's B-I-E-L. It's B-I-E or no B-I. It's B-E-I or B-I-E. God damn it, I don't remember. I always mix them. I'm a jerk in that way. I've known him since I was 12 years old, and I think it's B-E-I or B-I-E, and then L-I-K. And Nick Bielik, he has a YouTube channel. Check it out. And he just goes in depth into games, and it's awesome. And he is in the gaming world. He's a known person, but yeah, man, I do think that gaming has radically transformed my life. It gave me, it gave me all the skill sets that I use to like drill into a character when I'm writing a song. Even just drilling into my perspectives. The thing is that like being able to come up with a left of field perspective on an idea. I think really started from me gaming and being like, okay, I want to make a warrior. How do I make a warrior that is different? How do I come up with somebody that I've never seen before? And what would that look like? And how would that work? And I think that when you train your brain to think in that way, when you train your brain to look at things from a different perspective, and then keep iterating on those differences until you end up deep in the weeds with a perspective that is something you've never even knew was possible. I think that's a really important thing. So anyway, so we will be having. So I'm gonna go. This is the stream. It's just a real short one today. But the reason why I'm not singing today is I'm just letting my voice heal. So I have a really posh tip for mini storage at your table. Go on Google and look up jewelry dresser. The wood ones look very geek chic-esque, and there are tons of little lined drawers. And that's awesome. That's great, man. Are you talking about this one? Wait, or are you just talking about in general? For this what are you talking about? Something that I've got, or are you talking about just in general for folks? Like you're like here's a thought regarding storage tables, because. I'm constantly trying to optimize. Like all of this stuff is things that I was going to be sorting out. I was like, I'll put this here and I'll take care of it tomorrow. And that was about a year ago. So yeah, that's just the way my brain operates. But thank you, everybody. We're gonna do the credits, and then I'll see you all very soon. And be well. I love you all. Adios. Wait, no, wait. There we go.